We gotta call the exterminator. These are rat turds.
Jimmy, this answers your concerns?
I think a lot of good ground was covered.
Maybe they should have called the exterminator all the way back in season 1. It could have helped with Jimmy. Maybe. What Jimmy did that made Tony particularly suspicious was after he got arrested, when they showed up while the guys were playing pool, as soon as Jimmy got out of jail, that same evening, he went to the Soprano residence, which was odd considering the fact that he had a record and was already out on bail for something else. You'd think they would have wanted to keep a tighter hold on him, unless he was purposely sent back out into the field as an informant. And then when Jimmy keeps asking Tony very specific questions...
My lawyer told him, hey, he doesn't own the building. He's not responsible for what's in the building.
That seem like they're meant to elicit incriminating responses.
So, what are you going to do about the Colombian money?
And it becomes more and more apparent to Tony that there's someone else or something else involved in this conversation somehow. So when Skip Lipari says Jimmy Altieri ate that pill for you, he could be saying it from the perspective of someone who knew that Jimmy Altieri was a cooperator, or Jimmy Altieri just happened to take that pill, whether or not he was actually a cooperating witness.
Decent God.
Well, that's the difference between Puss and the others. Them you loved.
We know that they found out with 100% certainty that Puss was a rat when Tony discovered the wire. But before that, what led him to want to go there in the first place? He had a dream where Puss was a fish who confessed. Different rats, different variables. Sometimes you feel it in your heart, sometimes you feel it in your stomach.
You were like a brother to me.
Listen, any chance you could ask Ron if this falls under the same arrangement?
But relax. It's not worth losing your hair over. And I can't forget to mention the classic parking lot conversation where Tony tells Jack, "Watch you don't get followed meeting me." Well, you know Jack, he's pretty careful. So much for that. It's kind of funny how Tony talks about Puss loving TGI Fridays, or probably being at TGI Fridays out in Arizona.
I took in Arizona. Stake out all the TGI Fridays.
And then earlier on in the show, there's a big TGI Fridays in the background of Jack and Tony as they're talking.
You weren't followed here, were you? Watch you don't get followed meeting me.
Hello?
Yeah, it's me. I'll see you up there.
There are certain things that Sil says to Adriana here on her final car ride that remind me of things he told her when Christopher actually was in the hospital back in season 2 after getting shot by Matt and Sean. He says Christopher's going to be fine and that he's very resilient, just like he tells her when Christopher's hospitalized that he's going to be fine, and that if anyone can make it through something like this, it's Christopher.
He's a strong kid, Chrissy. He's tough.
Hey, listen. He's a tough kid.
And then there are some rats that we only find out about after the fact, like Jimmy Petrille. Tony learns that Jimmy Petrille's a rat after Johnny Sack gets arrested, and he calls Neil Mink, and Neil delivers the news. Jimmy Petrille? He's a sweet old guy. Sometimes it's those sweet, quiet ones you gotta worry about. In hindsight, when looking back and rewatching the scene from Carmine Sr.'s funeral, when Jimmy Petrille says hello, Carmine turns his head for 1 second to introduce Nicole to Jimmy Petrille, and then when he turns his head, and poof, he's already gone on to the other conversation.
Your father meant a lot to all of us, and not just financially either.
Nicole, you remember Mr. Petrille?
What, honey?
Your father meant a lot to all of us, and not just financially either. Very much criminally as well.
Fuck is it?
I can't catch a fucking break.
This is Tony Soprano, talking about the Angelo Giacalone murder. The sound quality's not good, but I can back it up in court. He said...
Ray Curto. Stand-up guys like that are a dying breed. Well, he did die, but stand-up guy, not so sure about. Ironically, Old Man DeMeo, the boss from a while back, who got that life sentence, apparently wanted Ray to be the next boss, but Ray was not up for that. He says he has an 18-year-old with MS, etc., etc. He told his wife he'd be doing less, not more. Though it's a much different relationship than we see with some of these other guys and girl who really don't want to have anything to do with the FBI. With Ray, he seems pretty eager to help out. Eugene Pontecorvo.
At least Judas didn't go into any apostle protection program. He hung himself. He knew what he did.
I can't help but laugh when Rosalie makes this comment because she does it in such a Rosalie way, but it does tragically foreshadow Eugene Pontecorvo's fate the following season. Ray Curto said he'd back it up in court, whatever information he'd given to Agent Sanseverino, but then he croaked immediately afterward. But Eugene says the same thing, that he'd come back to testify, as if that would be some simple, easy process. Eugene somehow thought he was going to be able to package this all together in a way that would somehow work. And then once he gets the cold, hard truth that that's not happening anytime soon, both from the FBI and from Tony, he only sees one tragic way out. But nobody ever knows he was a rat to begin with. An interesting twist. Though interestingly enough, Eugene puts the puzzle pieces together and asks if Ray Curto was a cooperator. Another most likely rat we have is Carlo, who's suspected after his son gets picked up by the cops for selling ecstasy, and it appears someone's talking to the grand jury, with Mink estimating that it's about an 80 to 90% chance of Tony being indicted.
We gotta call the exterminator. These are rat turds.
What would Carlo's son getting arrested have to do with Carlo being a rat? Well, Carlo wants leniency for his son. I guess it's just natural, right? So what does he have to give them? We do not know if Christopher was a rat. I'm including him here because, while it's questionable, I think it's certainly worth noting, along with the others that are either confirmed or very likely rats. By the time we get to this point in the series, where we see Christopher wearing a hat, he's in a pretty bad headspace, and, as he told JT before shooting him, he feels like all of his friends have abandoned him, and are not really supportive of his attempts to stay sober, and they also don't really give a shit about anything he has to say about his family at home. Now, he could have just made that comment to JT about one phone call and it's over, because he was angry and because it's true. He did have a contact at the FBI, Agent Harris, a frequent Satriali's customer who Christopher had started talking with at the beginning of season 6. But just because Christopher could make a phone call, does that mean he would? Well, we don't know. We do see him sporting a new hat at night while meeting with Tony, Phil, and Butchie, but if he was wearing a wire, wouldn't they have picked up on all the illegal asbestos dumping talk? It's pretty serious stuff. I don't know that they'd want to ignore that in the meantime. Also, Christopher already has information to give them. Remember, he mentions Adriana, Ralph Cifaretto, I'm sure other things. So he wouldn't necessarily need to be wearing a wire or the hat with the wire. Febby Petrulio, the rat that got away, or so he thought. You know how Christopher told Matt and Sean, next time make it 2 towns over? If I could give Febby any words of wisdom, I'd say, next time, make it more than a few states over. At least get to Elvis country where you can find a motel filled with other rats you can spend time with. This is a very famous killing and one that really sets the stage for this new era of television where being a wise guy, even one who kills others with his bare hands, does not necessarily make you an unlikable guy. In many cases, the exact opposite.
We ought to call the exterminator. These are rat turds.
So, what do you think about the Sopranos Rats? I'd love to hear from you, and thanks for watching.